Former All Blacks head coach Scott Robertson is reportedly wasting no time plotting his next move in elite rugby after his shock departure from New Zealand Rugby earlier this year. The decision to part ways with the highly regarded coach sent tremors through the global game, particularly given Robertson's decorated history and the relative proximity to the 2027 Rugby World Cup. A stunning exit. Robertson's dismissal came after an extensive review of the 2025 international season. New Zealand Rugby concluded that the All Blacks were not on track to peak at the 2027 Rugby World Cup, a tournament that remains the ultimate benchmark for success in New Zealand. While results during his tenure were far from disastrous, they evidently fell short of the governing body's internal expectations and long-term projections. The move was widely described as ruthless, but consistent with the uncompromising standards historically associated with the All Blacks. In New Zealand, performance is not judged merely on wins and losses, but on trajectory. Whether the team is evolving quickly enough to remain ahead of rivals such as South Africa, France, and Ireland by the time the next global showpiece arrives. Robertson, who had built his reputation on innovation, emotional intelligence, and a remarkable run of domestic success, suddenly found himself on the outside looking in. The search for a successor with the role now vacant, New Zealand Rugby moved swiftly to identify Robertson's replacement. A leadership group that includes former All Blacks Kevin Mialamu and Dane Coles, head of high performance Don Tricker, acting chief executive Steve Lancaster, and chairman David Kirk has overseen the recruitment process. The criteria set out for applicants were notably strict. Prospective candidates must be New Zealanders and have prior experience as an international head coach. Those conditions significantly narrowed the field, ruling out several high-profile names who might otherwise have been considered. Among the early exclusions were Joe Schmidt, Vern Cotter, and John Mitchell, each of whom reportedly ruled themselves out. That left two clear frontrunners in Dave, Rennie, and Jamie Joseph, both seasoned operators with international experience and deep ties to New Zealand Rugby. There were also reports that former All Blacks head coaches Ian Foster and Sir Steve Hansen were contacted and encouraged to apply. Meanwhile, Warren Gatland, Wayne Pivac, and Kieran Crowley technically meet the criteria, though it remains unclear whether any of them formally entered the race. According to broadcaster Martin Devlin, the announcement of the new All Blacks head coach is imminent. He suggested that the union deliberately delayed confirmation in order to avoid overshadowing the opening round of Super Rugby Pacific, implying that a decision has effectively already been made. Whoever takes over will inherit immense expectations. Coaching the All Blacks is widely regarded as the most pressurized job in rugby union, perhaps in global sport, and the next appointee will immediately be tasked with steering the team toward a 2027 campaign that must deliver silverware. Robertson's next move. While New Zealand Rugby focuses on the future, Robertson himself is reportedly exploring options with equal urgency. The New Zealand Herald has claimed that his representatives made contact with the Queensland Reds to inquire about their head coaching situation. The Reds are in transition, with Les Kiss stepping into the role after Joe Schmidt's departure. At the time the report surfaced, there had been uncertainty regarding the longer-term structure of the coaching setup, that Robertson's interest in a Super Rugby or overseas club role would make strategic sense. It would allow him to remain active at a high level without immediately clashing with the terms of his exit agreement. That agreement reportedly includes a restraint of trade clause preventing him from joining another Tier 1 international side for 12 months. However, there is said to be a break clause. If the All Blacks have already played a particular nation during the season, Robertson could potentially join that country before the restriction expires. Such contractual nuances open the door to intriguing possibilities. Scotland speculation. One nation that has been tentatively linked with Robertson is Scotland. Head coach Gregor Townsend has faced scrutiny following inconsistent performances, including a difficult Six Nations campaign. If the Scottish Rugby Union were to make a change, Robertson's availability, albeit complicated by timing, would inevitably attract attention. However, the All Blacks are not scheduled to face Scotland until November. That timeline could complicate any immediate appointment unless contractual flexibility is negotiated. Adding further intrigue, Glasgow Warriors head coach Franco Smith is widely considered a leading candidate should Scotland opt for change. Even if Scotland proves unrealistic in the short term, the mere association underlines Robertson's standing in the international game. His brand of rugby, fast, adaptive, and psychologically attuned, remains highly respected despite the abrupt end to his All Blacks tenure. Tier 2 route? Robertson has previously spoken of his ambition to coach 2 different teams at a Rugby World Cup. That goal may yet remain alive in the current cycle. Even if traditional Tier 1 pathways appear temporarily blocked, World Rugby has, in the past, supported emerging nations by subsidizing the recruitment of experienced assistants or consultants ahead of global tournaments. A Tier 2 side seeking tactical sophistication and cultural transformation could view Robertson as a transformative figure. Such a move would be unconventional, but not unprecedented. It could also serve to enhance his reputation further, particularly if he were to elevate a developing nation into knockout contention at a World Cup. A Springbok conspiracy. Perhaps the most sensational speculation surrounds a hypothetical alliance with South Africa. In what has been described as a Hollywood-long shot, respected journalist Gregor Paul floated the idea that Robertson could join the Springboks coaching staff under Rassie Erasmus. At first glance, the notion appears implausible. The rivalry between New Zealand and South Africa is steeped in history, and a former All Blacks head coach switching allegiances would ignite intense debate. Yet Paul argues that Erasmus is one of rugby's most inventive thinkers, a strategist unafraid to deploy psychological maneuvers as part of his broader competitive approach. With the Springboks and All Blacks projected to collide in the knockout stages of the next Rugby World Cup, hiring Robertson could theoretically create narrative turbulence within New Zealand rugby circles. While this remains speculative, it highlights the extent to which Robertson's availability has sparked global intrigue. The Ireland angle, the conspiracy thread, deepens with suggestions that Erasmus may have had insight into the circumstances of Robertson's dismissal before it became public. The Irish Independent was the first outlet to report the news of his sacking, publishing detailed accounts of New Zealand Rugby's review process. Gregor Paul has dismissed several circulating narratives as red herrings, including suggestions of player unrest or a revolt led by senior figures, such as Artisavia. Instead, he posits that misinformation itself can become a destabilizing tool in elite sport. Whether any of these ideas carry weight is uncertain. What is clear, however, is that Robertson's departure has generated an unusually complex web of speculation. Legacy and reputation lost amid the noise is Robertson's remarkable body of work. Before ascending to the All Blacks role, he guided the Crusaders to 7 Super Rugby titles, establishing one of the most dominant dynasties in professional rugby. While his All Blacks tenure did not unfold as hoped, it would be reductive to frame it as a failure. International rugby is cyclical, and even the most successful coaches face periods of transition. What comes next? The coming weeks are likely to provide clarity on 2 fronts: the identity of the next All Blacks head coach and Robertson's subsequent destination. If Dave Rennie or Jamie Joseph is confirmed, New Zealand Rugby will seek stability and renewed forward momentum. Meanwhile, Robertson's next appointment, whether in Super Rugby, Europe, international rugby, or elsewhere, will be closely scrutinized. In modern rugby, elite coaches rarely remain unattached for long. The demand for strategic acumen and cultural leadership is global. Robertson embodies both. Whatever path he chooses, it will carry narrative weight. A return to domestic dominance, a bold international venture, or even an unexpected collaboration could reshape perceptions and rivalries alike. For now, one thing is certain: Scott Robertson's story in World Rugby is far from over.